I think I paused it. So, part of why we like to show this video of Simon Sinek at the beginning is because he pushes a lot of buttons. The goal here is for Tony and I to spend about 10 minutes each sharing some things that we've experienced with millennials, and then to open this up into an interactive presentation where all of us can kind of feed into it. Now, first thing I want to check is in the room, everybody that sees himself as a boomer, hands up, boomers in the room. Okay, and I'll check any veterans, any traditionalists. Okay, now I know we've got some others in X's. X's in the room? Okay, there's the X's and Y's. Any okay, look at that. 2 millennials, at least, maybe 3. There we go, 3. Okay. So, boomers, how many remember back a few years ago this thing we talked about called the generation gap? Yes, it was a big deal. Now, think about this. With 4 generations in the workforce, we now have 3 generation gaps. Now, if we remember, ours was bad enough to begin with dealing with that, the first Beatle haircuts and that sort of thing. Now we go to 2 other generation gaps in the workplace. Again, part of our goal here is to make this interactive near the end. I want to share a few things that I've experienced with my Vistage groups and also working in companies out there in the marketplace. Interestingly enough, in my 2 Vistage groups, about 35 companies represented, I now have 2 CEOs that are actually millennials, which has been an interesting thing to bring to the group. Another part of my experience is I moonlight as an adjunct professor in the Graduate School of Leadership at Azusa Pacific University. Ron, let's see, where's Ron? Ron does this at San Luis Obispo. Interesting thing is I've immersed myself among the terrorists. I'm in there with the millennials. And what this has done is it's given me a chance to put on a new lens and see these folks from a different perspective. And actually, just like I will say as boomers, we were actually a gift to the veterans or the traditional generation. These millennials are, in fact, a gift to us. They're a gift to the X's and to the Y's. And I'll share that with you in just a couple of different perspectives. One is this. Boomers, right? We get busy at the office, we get working, we get ahead of schedule, and what do? We do more, right? It's still Thursday, and we got Friday to do. Millennials, they get ahead of schedule, they get all their work done, and what do? Go home. Yeah, it's time to go home. See you Friday, or see you next Monday. Now, interesting thing, looks kind of bad to us boomers. Look at these guys, you know, they get half their work done and they want to bail. They look at us and they say, look at these guys, they're nuts. They work themselves to death. They spend 12 hours a day at the office and they want to do it for 2 more days. Now, what I've found is, again, the benefit of this generation gap is if we can appreciate them and realize that they see that we work too damn hard, and we can appreciate them and see that, hey, they realize that they don't work to live to work, but they work to live, that if we could come together and find that sweet spot in between, now we've got some magic, and the generation gap starts to work for us instead of against us. Another millennial thing that's an interesting piece. They're snarky little devils in the fact that when they meet you, they don't give you that automatic respect that we as boomers gave to the traditionalists ahead of us. You know, you were taught to respect your elders. These little bastards don't do that. They meet you and they see what you got, what you have to offer. You know, if you've got the goods, you're in, and if you don't, you're not. Now, as you think about it, it annoys you a little bit at first, but really, they're smarter than we are because we gave a lot of automatic respect to idiots that we worked for before we started our own companies that caused us to start our own companies. So I say another little gift to these millennials is that they only approve of people that have the goods. And if we as boomers can appreciate that, and they can appreciate that you should respect your elders, at least at some level, again, there's a sweet spot in the middle that we can bring each other together on. Let's see, last but not least, millennials want to have impact, okay? We boomers, we just wanted it to succeed. Now, they're a little too carried away with impact. We were a little too carried away with success. Now, if you blend those two again, you've got another sweet spot that's available to you. And the millennials, again, are the inspiration that bring that to us. So this generation gap is really more of an opportunity than a problem. Now, you notice Simon Sinek pushed a lot of buttons in here, talking about all kinds of different things. And the one I enjoyed the most was, as he was getting onto that whole cell phone thing and the cell phone on the table in the conference meeting, I thought, that's not just millennials. I've seen that bleed into X and to boomers, and even, my wife and I were out to dinner the other night. We looked over and there was a couple of people that could have been our parents that were just at a nice dinner house staring at those phones. So interestingly enough, that's part of what I think is the opportunity for the millennial. Oh, last thing too, or last thing, we talked about Mark's son, a plumber, okay? And it reminded me, plumbers come on a perspective, right? There's everything from a crappy plumber to a great plumber. And we've got to look at millennials and really X's and boomers the same way. Everything's in perspective. We've got this certain kind of classic millennial. We've got over here this exceptional millennial. And so I thought to myself, as I've kind of studied these folks, especially up at the university, what's the difference? And the difference really is the same thing with traditionalists, with boomers, and with X's. Is what you want is that exceptional millennial. And what is the exceptional millennial? Now, I found in every generation, the exceptional person usually comes with one key factor, which is a book written by another Gen X author called Drive. And for me, when I'm working with my CEOs and in their organizations, when we're looking at millennials or even any other generation, the key factor in hiring is, how do I get an exceptional millennial? I find one with some serious drive. And the interesting thing is, when you find these millennials, a lot of them are just as dissatisfied with their generation as the other generations are. That they want to be the difference makers in their organizations. So with that, I don't want to talk too long, because the good part's going to be when we get to Q&A, and the next good part is going to be Tony and Rico.
Thank you, Don.
You bet.